Listen to me.
I am!
Listen.
I am!
As soon as you calm down, we'll take care of this chair.
Great!
In the world of incarceration, prisons have their challenges, and female prisons are no stranger to these challenges and dangers. This video delves into the top 10 most dangerous female prisons across the globe. We are uncovering the harsh realities faced by the inmates, focusing on the environment, treatment of inmates, and the conditions within these institutions. We aim to shed light on the dark side of the prison system. Number 10. Pattaya Prison, Estonia. Pattaya Prison, located in Tallinn, Estonia, is a former fortress that was later converted into a security prison. It housed both males and females until it was officially closed in 2002. However, the prison's frightening history and poor conditions have earned it a top place on our list. The prison's walking yards were surrounded by a high and dense plank fence that had barbed wire at the top, and the guards were so active that they stood on a platform on the top of the plank to have a clear view of every inmate's activities. Pattaya prison grounds are stamped hard with no single blade of grass. The circular boardwalk was about a meter from the plank. A wooden barrel stood in the middle of the yard, half buried in the ground. The barrel is full of filthy greenish water, with a few cigarette butts and lumps of gob floating on top. These were arranged by cellmates so that now and then they could run and exercise on the boardwalk, and some elderly prisoners who can't exercise lean on these boardwalks. However, cells were dark, damp, and overcrowded, and are popularly known to be a breeding ground for diseases and infestations, making inmates prone to illness. The prisoners in Pattaya were subject to inhumane treatment by the prison guards, who were notorious for their brutality. Physical and psychological abuse were common occurrences, leaving many prisoners to suffer from lasting trauma. Moreover, medical care was almost non-existent, which led to the loss of life for many prisoners due to untreated illnesses or injuries. The prison has also witnessed several high-profile cases of human rights violations. As a Soviet prison, it has numerous untraceable executions, tortures, and forced labor. These executions were untraceable because no one's body was ever given back to their loved ones for funerals, and a mass grave has not been found in the prison yard. Maybe many of the dead were placed in quicklime. In the post-Soviet era, the prison maintained its dehumanizing operations, whereby its decaying infrastructure and living conditions continue to cause further suffering for inmates. The lack of separation between the male and female prisoners further made this place another hell on earth. Female inmates incur countless abuses, sufferings, and challenges, including assaults, from male guards and other inmates. You don't expect to dine well on grounds like this. The most common prisoner's food was 300 grams of bread a day. These poor dietary supplements further leave inmates with weak immune systems and pave a roadmap for infections. And within these harsh walls were underage inmates between 16 and 17 years. These teenagers were not exempt from the cruel suffering in Pattaya Prison. Remember, the prison was closed in 2002. Despite this, Pattaya Prison remains a dark emblem of the human rights violations that took place within its walls. Today, the prison serves as a museum and memorial site, giving tourists a glimpse into the cruel suffering endured by those who were imprisoned there. The stories of the women who experienced the horrors of prison present a strong reminder for reform and the protection of women's rights within the global prison system. Number 9. Bangkok Hilton, Thailand. Bangkok Hilton, officially known as Bang Kwang Central Prison, is located on the Chao Phraya River, about 11 kilometers north of Bangkok. This prison houses both male and female inmates. Despite its name, which paints an image of a luxurious hotel, the reality of this prison is far from glamorous. The prison was made by King Rama, the 7th monarch of Siam of the Chakri dynasty, in 1931 for detaining dangerous long-term and death row inmates. Dreadful conditions in this prison are clear evidence of harsh realities. From violence among inmates to strict disciplinary measures, the Bangkok Hilton is one of the most dangerous and feared prisons in the world. As of 2018, prison inmates totaled over 6,000, which makes the living condition despicable, with prisoners being stuck in very small cells infested with rodents and insects. Likewise, faced with immense heat, some prisoners are forced to sleep on hard floors due to a lack of beds. And no toilet facilities have resulted in widespread diseases and other health issues among prisoners. While these harsh treatments are common among other prisons, this particular Thai prison has certain unique challenges. Most of the inmates spend most of their prison terms in leg shackles. The prison is built on approximately 79 acres and divided into 2 different zones. The area behind the prison walls is about 39 acres, and the space outside is nearly 40 acres. The prison has 21 watchtowers, and each inmate is surrounded by 6-meter-long external walls, and these walls are equipped with high-voltage electricity. At the prison's center is a standalone guard tower, which gives the guard a complete view of the prison. This means that when the inmates are in their cells or in the open courts, they are closely monitored at all times. At its worst, in the early days of this prison, execution was done by the sword. You heard that right. But that changed to the firing squad. According to reports, there have been over 319 inmates, including females who have been executed by the firing squad. Although banned in 2013, this prison remains the only facility where executions were done with lethal injection. The most gruesome, inhumane treatment among inmates in the prison is that they are served animal food. Inmates are served a bowl of rice, vegetables, and tough chicken, which are insufficient to keep them going. This has made malnutrition a common illness among inmates, which has weakened them and made them prone to illnesses. Furthermore, corruption within the prison walls has made it such that necessities, including water, are in low supply, and treatments are made available for those who can pay for the service. This act has led to bribes whereby inmates pay prison guards who give them special treatment in return. Another thing is that female prisoners are targets for male guards and male inmates, which has resulted in assaults. Also, female prisoners are frequently subjected to dehumanizing strip searches and other forms of degrading treatment, which can have lasting effects on their physical and mental health. Bangkok prison medical facilities are poorly financed by authorities. This has led to the inability of sick or injured prisoners to receive appropriate care when needed. Despite the hardship, female prisoners are made to work in sewing factories where they are given daily production quotas. As you must have guessed, failure to complete the quota attracts harsh punishment or even solitary confinement. Additionally, the prison's disciplinary measures, such as prolonged periods of solitary confinement, have been reported by ex-convicts as having detrimental effects on their mental health. Punishments combined with abuse and neglect suffered by prisoners in this facility make it an unfortunate place for any prisoner, especially females. Number 8. Banha Women's Prison, Egypt. Banha Women's Prison is located in the city of Banha in Egypt. It's a place that echoes the cries of despair and the stifled voices of its incarcerated inhabitants. This prison is plagued by severe overcrowding, with cells designed for a fraction of the number of prisoners they house. This leads to cramped and unsanitary living spaces, lacking proper ventilation and necessities. The lack of adequate nutrition is another grave concern, as inmates are often provided with little to eat that barely meets their daily nutritional needs. Malnutrition and related health issues run wild, causing physical and mental deterioration among incarcerated women. Within Banha Women's Prison, violence is an ever-present specter. The scarcity of resources and the confined space breed an environment where tensions run high and conflicts erupt frequently. Dangerous criminals thrive, resulting in brutal fights and assaults. Guards, overwhelmed and small in number, often deny to have seen such violence, allowing the cycle to persist. Inmates live in perpetual fear, forced to navigate a treacherous landscape where their safety is constantly at risk. Banha is not a place you would like your enemy to be. The treatment of inmates within these walls is marked by a complete disregard for their dignity and rights. Physical and verbal abuse by the prison staff is alarmingly common, leading to a culture of humiliation and powerlessness. The absence of proper disciplinary measures allows for unchecked mistreatment, reinforcing the cycle of violence and degradation. Inmates are subjected to harsh punishments, including extended periods of isolation and solitary confinement. Solitary confinement within Banha Women's Prison is used as a method of punishment and control. Inmates are isolated in tiny windowless cells for extended periods, deprived of human contact and natural light. This form of punishment takes a severe toll on prisoners' mental health, often leading to long-lasting psychological trauma, depression, and anxiety. The practice of solitary confinement, rather than fostering rehabilitation, further degrades the mental state of incarcerated women. The mental and physical well-being of inmates within Bangkok Women's Prison is gravely neglected. For example, the lack of access to proper healthcare services amidst existing conditions prevents timely intervention for ailments and injuries sustained during activities. Mental health concerns and post-traumatic stress disorder go untreated, leaving the women to suffer in silence. The dire conditions and constant exposure to violence and abuse from guards and violent inmates only serve to worsen their mental anguish. Bangkok Women's Prison stands as a testament to the hardships of female prisoners in the prison system. The deplorable conditions, inadequate nutrition, rampant violence, cruel treatment, disciplinary measures, solitary confinement, and neglect of mental and physical health paint a grim picture of a facility that perpetuates suffering and despair. Urgent reforms are needed to address the systemic issues plaguing this prison, ensuring that incarcerated women are treated with dignity, compassion, and the chance for rehabilitation they deserve. Number 7. Tashkent Women's Prison, Uzbekistan. Tashkent Women's Prison is located within the borders of Uzbekistan, a place shrouded in darkness and despair. Known for its abysmal conditions and an atmosphere of fear, this correctional facility has earned its reputation as one of the most dangerous prisons for women worldwide. The structure of the Tashkent Women's Prison is in a dilapidated state with crumbling walls and overcrowded cells that leave inmates grappling for even a sliver of personal space. The stench of decay permeates the air, mingling with the oppressive silence that hangs heavily within the corridors. In this desolate environment, the imprisoned women endure daily hardships, deprived of the basic amenities required for a dignified existence. Behind the bars of Tashkent Women's Prison, violence has become an unwelcome companion. A culture of brutality prevails, perpetuated by both fellow inmates and the very guards entrusted with their well-being. In 2005, 3 prisoners were killed by guards in a bloody riot that left dozens injured in a complete state of disarray. Gang activity and power dynamics reign supreme, with hardened criminals taking advantage of weaker ones and subjecting them to physical assaults, abuse, and coercive exploitation. It's also quite disturbing how these violent inmates go unpunished. However, it only reveals the absence of effective security measures which allow rival factions to clash, turning daily life into a battlefield, leaving the women in a perpetual state of fear. Diseases, particularly tuberculosis, are rampant, and these conditions jeopardize prisoners' health while endangering their life, as these conditions often go untreated due to a lack of necessary medications in the prison. With the absence of basic hygiene needs like sanitary facilities, diseases spread rapidly within confined spaces. With no support or access to mental health services within the facility, female prisoners face isolation, humiliation, and constant exposure to violence. As this takes an immense toll on the psychological well-being of incarcerated women, many inmates suffer from severe depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. For pregnant prisoners, they are made to give birth at the district hospital, which is located 10 kilometers from the prison, and every other decision about the child is made by prison staff. The harrowing experiences of the imprisoned women within Tashkent Women's Prison highlight the urgent need for systemic reform and a renewed commitment to human rights. Number 6. Changi Women's Prison, Singapore. The Changi Women's Prison is located on the southern shore of the island city of Singapore. This confinement is one of the oldest and largest in the country, covering an area of about 120 acres and housing about 1,200 prisoners. Though the prison has seen a lot of structural changes, from building renovations to staffing, it remains one of the most terrifying places for female prisoners. The fact is, a large portion of prisoners in Changi are foreigners, particularly Thai, Filipino, and Chinese women who are being held on drug smuggling charges and other serious charges. And the general atmosphere is extremely tense and hostile. The conditions at Changi cells are unsanitary, and there's a great chance of infectious diseases. On hygiene, inmates are exposed to irregular supplies of water and dirt. Another thing is nutrition. The quality of food served depends on the prison's budget and affordability. It was found that inmates take 4 slices of white bread, butter, and strawberry jam spread for breakfast. Lunch and dinner options include white rice with mixed vegetables. Though these look undeniably nutritional, inmates who are allergic to certain food are not considered. Additionally, the prison lacks mattresses, and the Changi authorities justified this as a way to reduce suicide attempts, so inmates sleep on mats. Aside from these ruthless conditions, 8 prisoners fit into a cell with a single squat toilet and 1 showerhead for bathing. Inmates are often subjected to intense canning. This form of sanction is imposed on prisoners who commit aggravated prison offenses. This punishment has left some with physical injuries which are often left untreated. This physical abuse goes beyond canning, and most times, these punishments often result in prisoners having high mental issues and being unattended. Prisoners are also placed in solitary confinement for 2 weeks or more, depending on the offense. For the designated period, the isolation takes place in a small cell with limited social interaction. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. The harsh conditions of prisons are obvious from the few on our list. Though cases of strip searches are common in some prisons, massive stripping like what has drawn controversies to the physical and mental abuses women faced within closed walls, all in the name of confinement. Take a few seconds and carefully look at the image. It doesn't seem like these women were being searched, nor is it a muster call. However, they were asked to put their hands behind their backs and unclothed. What are your thoughts about this representation of conditions and treatment in some prisons around the globe? What are your thoughts about the prison system's conditions in your area? Number 5. Tipitapa Women's Prison. Tipitapa Women's Prison, commonly known as La Esperanza, meaning the hope, stands amidst the rugged landscapes of Tipitapa, which is 25 kilometers from the capital city of Managua. Within its towering walls lies tales of fear, and although the prison is one of the most policed and monitored places on the planet, Tipitapa Prison has not given any hope, but has instilled more fear even among the most hardened criminals. The prison is organized in large blocks and some individual cells. It was originally built to provide rehabilitation for women who had committed crimes, but local human rights organizations say conditions quickly turned abusive. In prison, punishments and treatments of convicts vary on the level of crime. Political prisoners and druggies are isolated from the rest of the female inmates, and they are treated like epidemics. Even convicts charged with non-violent offenses are often subjected to unusual, notorious, cruel, and draconian punishment. This has drawn reactions from international bodies, however. There is more to this inmate treatment. In the cell, the lack of drinkable water, proper food, beds, and medical treatment are ongoing issues. Overcrowded cells with rows upon rows of cramped cells, housing a staggering number of inmates, create an atmosphere that is volatile, rife with tension and poor ventilation. Each of the cells has single toilets in which inmates have to suffer from delayed excretion and have to endure awful odors from cellmates' poop. This collectively leads to worsening conditions for inmates with previous health issues. These inhumane conditions are tripled as extremely violent inmates and guards brutally assault prisoners at will. There have been reports of women being stoned and having their limbs hacked off by machetes. The stories of women incarcerated within these walls highlight the pressing need for prison reform and the protection of human rights for all inmates regardless of their gender. Number 4. Chowchilla Prison, California. The Chowchilla Prison was created by the state of California under the authority of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and opened in October 1990. It was established to address the growing need for correctional facilities for female inmates in California. While there may have been multiple individuals involved in the planning and development of the prison, it was ultimately the state government that oversaw its creation. Today, this prison houses over 3,000 inmates, which makes it bear the grim title of being the largest women's prison in the world. But it's not the size that makes this dungeon frightening. It's the rampant violence. The overcrowded conditions at Chowchilla Prison worsened in 2012 due to the structural changes of the time. However, this deplorable state has led to infections and lots of health concerns. According to reports, it is believed that healthcare staff in this prison routinely prescribe expired, incorrect, or insufficient medication, which resulted in life-threatening health challenges and incurable infections. Inmates' nutrition is poorly catered for. Prisoners in Chowchilla breakfast and dinner include 2 spoons each of rice, peas and carrots, beans, and chicken tamale casserole. This poor diet weakens inmates. Chowchilla Prison is also a breeding ground for notorious criminals from around the world, and it's not unheard of for prison guards to turn a blind eye to gang activity. According to the survival of the fittest, gang activity within these walls paints a chilling reality of inmates' everyday life and survival strategies. Convicts are likewise faced with all sorts of demeaning abuses, from strip searches to assaults. A popular case is that of a Chowchilla Prison former officer, 55-year-old Gregory Rodriguez, accused of assaulting at least 22 female inmates. Essentially, efforts must be made to address these issues of human rights violations and abuse, ensuring the safety and well-being of women who are incarcerated and promoting a more rehabilitative and humane approach to the correctional system. Number 3. Tihar Jail, India. Tihar Jail was initially controlled by the state of Punjab until 1966, when it was transferred to the National Capital Territory of Delhi. This prison covers over 400 acres, making it the largest jail yard in India. The height of the walls surrounding the Tihar Jail in India varies throughout the complex. Tihar Jail is a sprawling facility consisting of several different jails within its premises, each with its own designated security measures. The walls of Tihar Jail can range from approximately 20 to 30 feet in height, depending on the specific location and purpose of the enclosure. These tall walls are designed to ensure the security and containment of the inmates within the prison complex. But what is life like behind those high walls? Though this prison only has a capacity for 6,000 inmates, nearly 17,000 souls, almost triple its intended capacity, are housed in it. While we can use this to measure unhealthy conditions inmates are exposed to, there are even worse cases. Assaults here are as predictable as many cases of prisoner violations and abuses suffered by their fellow inmates and guards. Among necessities, spending time in these walls subjects convicts to intake of animal food. Not like animal food, but they are fed a menu with less nutritional and no consideration for individual dietary requirements. The majority of prisoners are Hindi speakers. However, guard workers are carefully selected from non-Hindi-speaking countries. This provides a daring challenge for inmates who stay locked in an iron-barred room. Corruption has also been reported, with guards often taking bribes to smuggle in forbidden items into the prison. Also, the jail is unsafe as inmates lack fear inside the prison and execute more criminal activities. Since guards are short-staffed, inmates committing suicide and getting into violent clashes in these jails have often raised issues regarding security inside the premises. It's also said that several inmates are languishing in cells without trial, trapped illegally, which further promotes the horrors faced by female prisoners within the walls of Tihar Jail. Number 2. Rosies Jail at Rikers Island, New York. Rosies Jail on Rikers Island, New York was created in 1988, named after Rose Singer, a longtime jail reform activist. As a contemporary prison, it was supposed to be a solace for women to be treated humanely and kept safe. The living conditions at Rosies Jail were appalling, the overcrowding filth and squalor being the norm. Inmates were crammed into unsanitary cells with inadequate ventilation and a lack of proper hygiene facilities, resulting in the rapid spread of diseases and infections. Malnutrition was widespread due to small food rations, which further weakened prisoners and left them susceptible to illness. Physical and psychological abuse are also common, as inmates are constantly subjected to worsened torture with brutal beatings and humiliation by Rosie's guard. Injured inmates are often neglected, which has led to inmate fatalities. Statistically, 85% of prisoners are mothers, with a number of them having substance abuse disorders. Most have suffered trauma and violence at the hands of men, and 2/3 were reported to have mental illness due to harsh jail conditions. In the worst-case scenario, 70% of the women at Rikers are awaiting trial, while others are put within these walls due to minor crimes. Over time, housing victims of different levels of crime in a single cell has resulted in physical injuries, exploitation, and other unrelated dehumanizing behaviors. That's why Rosies Jail earned a nickname as a gladiator school for its inter-prisoner violence. Number 1. Neve Tirza Prison, Israel. In 1968, Neve Tirza was finally launched into full operations, and it became one of the several prisons located in Ramla, about 15 miles southeast of Tel Aviv. As the only women's prison in Israel in 2019, it already had about 200 women incarcerated figures. Making its mark as one of the most dangerous female prisons, Neve Tirza is dangerously overcrowded, with up to 6 inmates sharing each a 140-square-foot cell. The prison's solitary confinement wing has cells so small that an average-sized person can't turn around in them. This wing is bug-infested and unventilated and has become a popular ground for infections. Beyond poor hygiene, in 2003, an anti-torture group who visited the prison complained that inmates were subjected to inhumane violence. Most of this violence ranged from unrestrained guard beatings, often leaving physical cuts like bruises on limbs, back, and faces. The violence led to traumas including mental illnesses, which are now a common problem among inmates. The prison lacks the capacity and workers to treat ailing prisoners due to labor shortage. Statistically, 60% of inmates use prescribed psychiatric drugs, which are self-funded. Surprisingly, many of these inmates on drugs are mothers with kids. And because prison only provides ample time for prisoners to spend time with their kids, this situation has further destabilized and worsened the health status of inmates. Many of the convicts who suffer from abuses of varying grades, either from guards or fellow inmates, were often threatened, and as such, these cases remain unreported, which further exposes more inmates to multiple assaults. The rate criminals are arrested for previously convicted crimes is quite alarming. While 70% of prisoners serving their second time in detention are notoriously aggressive and dangerous, the prison does not consider separating first-time offenders and teenagers from them. Instead, they are locked in the same cell, which further exposes new inmates to hardship and laments. In Neve Tirza prison, malnourished meals are common. Coupled with inadequate portion sizes, limited food options, and substandard quality conspire to perpetuate a state of hunger. Inmate nutrition includes 1 container of cottage cheese shared among 4 prisoners, part of a cucumber or tomato, gruel made of water and flour, and a cup of tea. With the only food item available in unlimited quantities being bread, some released prisoners in Neve Tirza shared their stories of crying uncontrollably because of hunger. The inmates' feelings of humiliation and helplessness over the issue of food are enormous. The meager meals offered fail to meet the basic caloric and nutritional requirements necessary for sustenance. This malnourishment weakens the inmates physically and mentally, diminishing their chances of successful reintegration into society. Female prisoners' treatment in Neve Tirza is a further reminder of the appalling conditions of inmates and the need to incorporate customary regulations to monitor all human rights violations. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.